Y'all, welcome back to Biblically Blonde. In this video, we're going to be going over the story of Abimelech and Abraham, which is going to be in Genesis 20 and 21. So if you're interested, then keep watching. Alrighty, y'all, like I said in the intro, today we're going to go over Genesis 20 and 21, which is the story of Abimelech and Abraham. Now, if you're new to my channel, my name's Lacey. I was going to say my name's Biblically Blonde, but my name's Lacey and this is Biblically Blonde. And here we see wholehearted living for Christian women. I also do these type of Bible guides or Bible studies, and basically I go over the scripture. I tell us what happens, why it happens, what it tells us about God, and how we can apply it in our daily life. So it's a full kind of overview of scripture. Right now we're going through Genesis very slowly, but we're getting there. One of the goals with this is to try to get a full understanding of scripture, more so than ever before. I think a lot of times in scripture we kind of gloss over it or we don't fully understand it and we move on to the next verse or next chapter, and that's not what I want. I want us to have a deep understanding of scripture so we can go closer to God. And so that's why I'm taking this literally chapter by chapter and going over all of Genesis. So now that I blabbed and blabbed, let's get started. I did want a quick note before we get into this. There are two Abimelechs in the Bible. There's an Abimelech in Judges. So if you have been searching and you're looking for that story, I do have a Bible guide on that particular story, and that'll be linked down below. It is in the book of Judges. So if you're looking for Judges Abimelech, go down here below. If you're looking for Genesis Abimelech, you're in the right place. So what happens in the story of Abraham and Abimelech? Well, this is in Genesis 20 and 21. Now, sometimes in scriptures, you're going to have a story within a story. And so in Genesis 20, we're dealing with Abimelech. And then in 21, we actually have the birth of Isaac. And I'm not going to be going over that. That will be in the next video. So where are we in this story? Now, let's remember that Abraham has been called by God to be the father of generations, the father of nations. Him and Sarai, now Sarah, their names have been changed, are going to be the matriarchal and patriarchal society for the Israelites to come. And namely, they're going to be this divinity line that leads to Jesus Christ. And that's going to go on for generation after generation. But it's all going to start with them. Abraham's going to be the father of so many people. Numerous as the stars, it tells us in the scripture. And so in the last few chapters, we've seen the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. We've seen what happens to Lot, Abraham's nephew, and now we're back at Abraham. And so Abraham is continuing on. Much of his life, he has journeyed from place to place to place. Now, he's not traveling every single day. What he's typically doing is picking up, finding a place to live, maybe for a few months, a few years. We would see in scripture the longest being maybe 15 to 20 years. So he is living in places for a period of time, but not for a lifetime. So he's always going to be picking up and moving once more and over after a few years has gone by. But he's certainly not moving every single day. So that is where we are picking up in Genesis 20. So Abraham is journeying and he settles down in this area of Gerar, which is essentially in the promised land, which will be later important when we deal with the Israelites. But right now it's just the land of Gerar. And in that there is a king and his name is Abimelech. Well, Abimelech thinks that Sarah is attractive for this woman. Now, this is really interesting to me because at this point in time, Sarah's in her late 80s. And I don't know how things worked. People lived a really long time back then, and they also were able to have, like Sarah, at this point in time is still being picked up by guys. And so I don't know if she just aged slower or if she was just outstandingly beautiful for 89 years old. We'll never know, but what we can gather is that even in 89 years old, there are kings of nations that would like to bed her and like to take her in either as a concubine or as a wife of some kind. And so what essentially happens is this is a repeat. We've seen this before. Abraham says to Sarah, "Do not tell them that I am your husband. Tell them that I am your brother," or that you are my sister is actually what he says, that you are my sister, which is true because she is his half-sister. However, it is not the full truth. And so Abimelech does. He has his men come and take Sarah. and they say, "This is my sister." Well, God actually is not very pleased with this once again, because Sarah has been told that within a year's time, she's going to give birth to a son named Isaac. And so it is essential that the father of Isaac be Abraham and not be anyone else. It has to be Abraham. And so by this man taking Sarah and Abraham allowing it and, actually kind of fueling the fire by saying she's my sister, she's putting the line of Jesus Christ in jeopardy here. And so God's not happy. He comes to Abimelech in a dream and says that you are a dead man if you touch this woman. Give her back to her husband. He lied to you and whatnot. So then we see the next morning Abimelech clearly shaken by the Lord coming to him, and he calls Abraham to him and says, "What have you done? Why would you do this to me?" And Abraham says, it says in verse 11, Abraham replied, "I said to myself, there is surely no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she is really my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother, and she became my wife." So here Abraham is basically saying a half-truth. He is clearly afraid for his life, and he believes that because these are not God-honoring people, that they could clearly not bestow upon him any type of hospitality or honor, and that they would kill him to be with Sarah. And so Abimelech says, "Nope, I'm not dealing with this." He actually believes in the Lord that visited him. He has fear of him. We're not sure if there's a conversion that happens. I don't think so. But clearly he is shaken, and he knows that whoever did speak to him has power and has ultimate authority, and he is going to do what he says. And so he gives back Sarah to Abraham and says, I was never with her. He gives them a couple of gifts to show that that actually never occurred. And it tells us in scripture that there was a curse put upon the people, and so we're not sure if this is upon the women or the men, but all of Abimelech, his family, and their people were unable to conceive children during this time period. And that is because God wanted to make sure that Abimelech did not touch Sarah. So based on that, I'm led to believe that this was some type of erectile dysfunction, something that happened that made the men unable to sleep with the women, because that would imply that Abimelech was unable to sleep with Sarah. Now, we don't know that for sure, but what we do know is that something occurred where they could not procreate. They could not have children. And so once Sarah was restored with Abraham, that curse was lifted. So that is the end of Genesis 20, and we see that things have kind of settled. So then we're going to jump ahead to Genesis 21 and go to verse 22. We're going to kind of not pay attention to the first part of 21 because that'll be in the next video. And this part is called the Treaty of Beersheba. And it tells us that this time Abimelech calls upon Abraham again and says, Abraham, we have a rapport with each other. And he basically acknowledges Abraham and his God. And he says, I know that God looks favorably upon you in everything that you do. And because of this, I don't want to cause strife. I don't want to cause, war between our peoples. I don't want to cause there to be any bad will, anything like that. And so I just ask that the favor that I bestow upon you, you would bestow upon me. And Abraham agrees. He's like, of course, I definitely agree to that. And then Abraham kind of tells him, hey, while I'm here, I want to let you know that our people have been arguing over this well. And so this is a very desert area. Wells are clearly important. Water is the source of life. And it's really important to Abraham that him and his family, and when I say family, I mean hundreds of people. This isn't like 5 people. This is a people group that are living in this land. They need this well. And so Abimelech says, I had no idea that our people were even quarreling. What is that word? Okay, I don't know how to pronounce that word, but basically I had no idea that our people were arguing about this, and you can have the well. And to make sure that you have the well, we're going to make a treaty. And so they make the first treaty, and it is the Treaty at Beersheba. And so we see at the end of that Abraham actually plants a tamarisk tree at the site of this well, and the tree is going to grow. And it tells us at the end of scripture, and Abraham stayed in the land of the Philistines for a long time. And so what we can gather from that is that him and Abimelech had a peaceful transition of living between the two people, and that while Abraham journeyed, he never stayed in one area for the rest of his life. He did live in this area for quite a long time, at least 20 years or so. and long enough for this tree to grow and to prosper. And that's kind of the symbolism of the tree, is that it's going to be where Abraham really rests and really takes comfort for a long time, long enough for Isaac to be born and grow up. Sorry about my dog, he's a barker. So that is essentially what happens in Scripture. Now, why does this story happen? What does this matter in the story of Genesis and the story of God and his people? Well, it's the first mention of peaceful living between groups. And this is a clear sign that in certain times and with certain people, we are to live peacefully. We are to live in just not fellowship in the way that we fellowship with other Christians, but in a peaceful living. And it's really important to note this, because when the Israelites, who are the original readers of the book of Genesis, yes, we read it. It was not written for us, though. It was for the people that were going to be going into the promised land, the people of Exodus. And they were to go into war with the people living in the promised land, the Canaanites. They were to destroy them and to not have them live with them. It was so important that they did not create life and to commingle with these people. Now, that's kind of confusing, because here we're saying that we should live peacefully with other people. And so this is a clear sign from God that yes, most people we are to live peacefully with. Most people we actually want to show the love of God. When Abraham has this great rapport with Abimelech, it is not because Abraham is saying, oh, I'm going to destroy you, I'm so powerful over you. It's because he wants to show the love of God. For years and years to come, he's going to be worshiping and praising God to all of these people in the hopes that they will see what a godly man Abraham is and how good Abraham's God is. And so it's the first time that we see how important it is to show people the love and the joy of God, and that we are not to just destroy people because they think differently than us. Instead, we should aim to live peacefully. Now, yes, when we go down and we eventually get to Genesis and Deuteronomy and Numbers and all of that, we'll talk about why certain things happened in the land of Canaan and to those people. But for the majority of people, we want to aim to live peacefully with, and that's why this is written. So what does this tell us about God? Well, I believe this tells us that God is the God of fertility, and he is the giver and receiver of all life. He decides when life will come into this world. And we can see this by looking at the line of Christ and why it was so important that Sarah have a son through Abraham and have it when she did. Let's remember that Sarah is in her old age, and it's told us repeatedly that she is past the age of childbearing. On top of that, in the previous chapters, God has actually commanded and said, within a year's time period, you will give birth. So the plan has started. It's in action. He knows that within a year that Sarah's going to have a child. God has commanded it and actually come down and spoken that to Abraham. And here, within that time period, we can assume within a few months, Sarah has been taken by another man to be bedded by her. And yet God, through his power and his power alone, stopped Sarah from being taken by this man sexually. And through some way, we're not exactly sure if it was through her part or through his part, they were unable to be together in that way. He was unable to essentially rape her. But what we know for sure is that they were unable to have sex. And actually all the people in Abimelech's household were unable to have children during this time period. And when she went back to Abraham, that was when that was lifted and they could have children again in Abimelech's household. And so what we can see about God in this is that nothing will stop God's plan. When Abraham sinned and said, she is my sister, and allowed his wife to be taken by another man, God stepped in and supernaturally, I don't even like that word, but I guess that's the only word to describe it. God in his power came in and said, I will not allow this. Now, he didn't stop Abraham. He didn't come down and say, do not do this, do not sin. He allowed Abraham sin, but he did something above it. And he went above Abraham and in all his power made sure that Sarah was safe and that the line of Jesus Christ was safe. So then how can we apply this story of Abimelech and Abraham in our daily life? Well, I think the number one way is, are we believing that other people can have God in their hearts. Abraham believed that there was absolutely no way that these people could believe in the Lord or have any type of fear in God at all, let alone acknowledge him. And that was proven wrong. We're not sure if Abimelech actually converted. I don't really think he did, but he certainly acknowledged the fact that God is all powerful and that there was some type of divine power that had authority and was very honorable and favorable upon Abraham's life. And he accepted that. And he actually said, you know what? I don't want to mess with that, so let's live peacefully with one another. Now, when we take that and apply that in our life, are we thinking that we should live peacefully with one another? Are we looking with ways to have strife with non-believers? This world is filled with so many people who do not believe in the Lord that we believe in. And yet we are called to actually live peacefully. We should live peacefully more than we live any other way with these people. And it's through our peace and through our love and through our good ways that they will see the love and the joy of Christ. And so it's about being good to non-believers. Are we thinking, oh, there's no way that person would ever have the fear of God in their heart? Oh, there's no way that they would ever acknowledge my God. I'm not even going to give them the time of day. In fact, I'm not even going to acknowledge them. I'm going to ignore them. I'm going to, make it so that they don't have rights. They don't have basic human necessities, whatever it may be. And that's kind of a broader idea, but even in your own personal life, like the people that your neighbors, the people that you interact with, that maybe go to your kids' school or you work with, are you treating them with the same kindness that you treat others around you that believe in the Lord? Because it's through that peace and through that love and that joy of how we treat other people that we can show them the love of Christ more than anything else. So people will come to know Christ more through what you show of them than what you tell of them. And this is a story of a great example of that. Alrighty, y'all. I hope you enjoyed that. I will be back next time. We're going to talk about Genesis 21, and that is the birth of Isaac. So I'll see you next time. Bye.